Dead Crow Ranch. This vast spread of crooked land before you sits at the edge of the living and that of the dead. This place is filled with all kinds of horror. Monsters, demons, ghouls, and spirits. A warm-bodied wanderer such as yourself tends to make it this far now and again. I'm Nash Wilder, your cowboy crypt keeper, here to spin you a spooky yarn or two and send y'all flesh folk back where you belong. You sit by my fire, you're liable to hear all kinds of terror. They'll like to seep into your nightmares, make you wonder if you ever really did make it back home. This here fire calls out to the spirits, conjures up tales from beyond. Some are gory, some are thrilling, some are dirty, and some are mean. Take care listening, folks. These stories can be explicit. Don't get too frightened now. We haven't even gotten to the good part. Come sit by the fire, listen to the crackle of tonight's tale. You're listening to Dead Crow Ranch Podcast. Well, look who wandered out here to my fire. Welcome, my flesh-covered friend. Why don't you sit for a spell? But be careful now. The embers of tonight's tale are burning awful hot. Tale itself, though, might just chill you right down to the bone. Story here comes from the not-so-distant past. And the thing about the past is, sometimes you just can't hide from it. I reckon Cooper Shay learned the hard way that the past can do a whole lot more than just haunt you. This is Shadows at Hangin S, Part 1. The old mattress groaned, and the box spring let out a squeal as Cooper Shay leaned toward the nightstand, cursing under his breath as he stretched a shaky hand, his only good hand, to grab the bedside urinal. Holding his breath, his bony old fingers finally gripped the handle of the clear plastic bottle. And while he did his business, Shay pondered the happenings the night before. The voices, the screams, those eyes. Shay's luck ran dry ages ago, and now the bad luck had come calling. For the past several nights, his past plagued him in his home. Hoisting himself upright with the chain hanging from the bed frame, he threw himself into his wheelchair beside the bed. Sounding just like the mattress, Cooper's old bones creaked and squeaked in the sudden action. Bones like that had years of sorrow and misery weighing down on him. Wheeling himself into the front room, Shay peered out the waxy windows to make sure his visitors had gone with the darkness the sun had shooed away. Shay looked out at his property, Hangin S Ranch, and thought of the gem it once was. The barn that was in disrepair, the pastures that hadn't seen green grass in a decade. Even the trees had dried up and died. No leaves had cast shade over the ranch in some time. Good fortune had once shined on Cooper Shay and had landed him that ranch. Gave him cattle to fill the pastures too. Nowadays all he had was a few cattle around, sold one steer a year. Only enough to pay for feed these days. State did send him some money to help with living expenses since the stroke that took all the strength from his left side. No, life had not been kind to Cooper Shay in a long time. Dust curled up at the edge of the road, around a beat-up, primer gray International Scout as it rumbled up to the house. Colt Barker, hired hand at Hangin S, coming up from the bunkhouse down past the barn. Colt was a kind young man. Not the brightest, but a hard worker, and he cared about the ranch. Hell, he'd stayed on even when the place went belly up. Took care of the old man for nothing more than a place to stay and food on his plate. Old Cooper liked the boy, and wished he could pay him back for all the kindness he had done him. And one day he would. "Morning, Coot," Barker called as he walked into the front room, his blonde hair like straw seeming to glow in the rays of an early morning sun. Coot was what the ranch hands had called Shay for years, and the name had sufficiently stuck. Barker was a young man, 26, tall and thin but wiry and strong, He was eager to learn, and Cooper knew that he'd make a great name in ranching one day. Colt lit the stove and set up the percolator to make the morning's coffee, and soon the room was filled with the nutty aroma. Coot shuffled in his chair, uncomfortable and restless from lack of sleep.
Still ain't sleeping good, Coot?
Colt asked, buttering a piece of toast.
Nah, I can't sleep a wink in that damn bed. Mattress is all fucked up.
Coot grumbled as he looked out the window. Worried he'd see those visitors again.
Well, shit, maybe the hospice nurses can get you another one.
I doubt it, Shay responded as he took a mug of hot sludge from Barker. Just how he liked it, the grittier the better. Hospice sent nurses twice a week the last few since Cooper's illness took a turn. Hadn't been the stroke that was making him worse, though. Coot had been alive for 87 years. He'd worked hard all his life for what he had. Made a big name for himself in the cattle trade. Worked his way from fixing fences to owning his own bustling ranch. And he gave a lot more than blood, sweat, and tears to pay for it all. Coot had also seen it start to crumble apart. Cattle trade changed. Industry expanded. Nowadays, you don't even know where the beef you eat comes from. What a crock of shit, Cooper thought. He wished he could go back to the good times, so he closed his eyes with a sip of coffee, and he tried. A memory pushed to the surface, one that Coot always tried to avoid. A memory on how he'd gotten his big break, his new beginning. Before he knew it, old Coot was way past memory lane. He was back in the San Bernardino Mountains. Coot had been a hand on a fence crew, mending fences for the Talmadge family, who owned hundreds of thousands of acres and thousands of cattle. Coot's work took him from Whitewater to Big Bear, California, and all over the San Jacinto and San Bernardino Mountains. Coot would ride up and down the steepest, most dangerous terrain around, checking fence lines and repairing them as needed. Well, him and his partner, Stetson Wyatt, rode with Shay back in those days. The man was tall and broad, with a square jaw and curly blonde hair peeking out from his aptly named hat. He wore a Stetson Rancher, with a cowboy crown and a flat brim. An arrogant prick from L.A. He came out to the mountains to play cowboy for a while. His daddy was some banker or something. Cooper never asked. He hated that dude. Hated everything about that man. He always dressed up like some bandito, as if a shootout were around every corner. Carried some gaudy, gold-plated .45 Colt Peacemakers, too. Guess he reckoned the more expensive the gun, the more dead the other guy'll be. The worst part about this guy was he never stopped smiling. At that time, fence lining, as Coot called it, was a hard job. Took about 10 days to ride from Whitewater to Big Bear, and that's sticking to the trails. Following the fences wasn't as easy. Long days of riding, fixing holes, cutting up fallen trees. The days were long, the nights were cold, the food was scarce, and that ugly smiling asshole on the other side of the campfire was always there. Cooper never thought about killing a man before, but he knew he'd never shed a tear if that bastard had dropped dead. Every day, Cooper would snarl and grumble as Wyatt boasted and laughed. Shay's stomach would turn as Wyatt talked about women and parties and the lavish lifestyle back home. Some days it felt like the ride would never end. No one gives a shit about your parties, asshole, Cooper gritted. Maybe you don't, Stetson laughed. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of parties once you make it as a rich fence fixer. He about fell off his horse. You son of a bitch. Cooper glared at the laughing dude on a horse. Things didn't get better. In fact, as they tend to do, tensions boiled hotter and hotter each night. Cooper had to fight himself to keep his hands off of Wyatt's throat. Then, one night after much whiskey and little thought, Cooper was well on his way to ignoring Wyatt's existence. Starved of attention, though, Stetson began to chime in about the pretty girls in L.A., how he could probably spend each night with a different one if he wanted, and they'd all be prettier than any girl one would find around a cattle ranch somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Have you ever even seen a girl that wasn't your sister? Wyatt asked, craning his neck and peering through the flames at Shay. I mean, I guess that doesn't make much of a difference around here, does it? Wyatt rocked forward, full belly laughing at his own joke. You reckon you're so funny, smart ass? Shay spit, jumping to his feet, tossing the whiskey bottle. Shay was fixing to throttle him for that one. "Yes, sir, I think I am." Stetson grinned and peered up at Shay. Shay lunged forward and tackled Stetson Wyatt, and the two wrestled in the dirt, grabbing and swinging at one another. Dust and weeds thrashed around the boys as they fought. Shay tasted the dirt and the blood, both sticking to his mouth and on his lips. At the collar of one another, the two of them rolled around in the dirt all over the narrow ridge where they had set up camp. The horses whinnied and bayed when rocks and debris came their way. Shay had no thoughts in his head in that moment. He had his enemy right where he wanted him. Somewhere in his mind he felt an instinct, a primal urge to take this man's life, to end him now completely and forever. But before he could, Wyatt shot a knee up into his gut and threw him to the side. Shay held tightly to Stetson's brand-name jacket, though, and with a sudden tumble, both men went over the edge of the bank and down a steep ravine. When Cooper Shay opened his eyes, he was at the bottom of a drainage, bruised and bloodied. Stiff and sore, he sat up and took in his surroundings. Lit only by the light of a yellow moon, the gully was steep. Rocks and trees dotted the grassy fissure. Manzanita and sagebrush poked out from the barren spots here and there. Wyatt was nowhere to be seen. Nearby, Shay could hear running water and looked down to see a trail along a narrow creek. A few paces up the trail, he saw a small, thin opening that looked like the mouth of a cave. As he walked up on the cave opening, a deep thud fell in Shay's chest, a rhythmic beat alongside that of his own heart. He felt the need to enter that cave as he looked in. Inside, he saw a glowing green light, flickering like flames. The overwhelming need to go inside boiled deep within him as he stood there shaking. "Wyatt!" Shay yelled in a hushed tone. No reply came from the cave. "Stetson!" Still nothing. Cooper entered the cave and felt a hot, damp breeze surround him, like he was standing in the mouth of a big dog. The flickering green light grew brighter as he continued in, and soon the cavern opened up into an oval-shaped room. The source of the light was impossible to believe. A giant ball of green fire hovered above a low altar in the center of the room. Crude drawings on the walls and artifacts littered the room, and there among them was Stetson Wyatt. Wyatt was bent over like a kid on Christmas checking out his new toys. He played with and poked at the artifacts made of clay and sticks. "What the hell is all this shit?" Wyatt said when he saw Shay had entered the room, a huge grin on his beat face. Suddenly, Cooper was hot with anger again. No idea why, but seeing Stetson wreck the relics around the room filled Cooper with rage and grief. Before he could act on his feelings, he felt something else. That pull he felt toward the cave had returned, only stronger. Cooper gasped as a voice rang out in his own head.
"Cooper Shay, kneel before my altar. I can make you rich. I can make you happy. Women, money, whatever you desire can be yours."
Shay's mind flashed with visions of himself, standing at the gate of an enormous ranch bearing his name, in a bed surrounded by beautiful naked women, at the bank withdrawing stacks of cash taller than he'd ever seen in his life. All these visions began to mystify the young man. He had come from a simple lifestyle. Could he really have all these riches and women? How?
"Pledge yourself to me,"
the voice in his head replied.
"Give me an offering, and I will grant you what you wish."
"Who the hell are you anyway?" Shay asked, shaking the fogginess out of his head. "Me?" Stetson replied, looking around the room. "Who are you talking to, Coop?" But Cooper couldn't hear Stetson. The voices in his head and the visions of lavish futures blocked out the real world. Cooper had come to California to build a better life, and now here was an offer at building one. Was there a way to get those things without mending fences for the next 10 years?
"Yes,"
the voice replied.
"You simply must fulfill the offering."
Colt Barker hustled back into the front room of the house. The sunset glow poured in through the crack the door had made. Cooper sat still in his chair, looking out at the mountains ever aware of the coming darkness. "Ready for supper, Coot?" Colt asked as he made his way to the kitchen. Shay just grunted. That was a tough memory to snap out of so quick. Must have spent the whole day reliving the past, he figured. He fidgeted nervously in his wheelchair as Barker made dinner. The front of the house made a wide W, with the dining room on one side, the family room on the other. A couch sat in the middle of the family room, separating the hall in front of the door. Cooper wheeled himself around the couch and placed a double-barrel shotgun that was in his lap on top of a side table pressed against the back of the couch. Then he wheeled himself into the dining room to get a bowl of supper. Another night of chili and rice. Coot shoveled around the bowl with a spoon, thinking about that night in the cave. "No good, Coot?" Barker asked, some hurt in his voice. "It's good. No appetite is all, and new meds." Shay forced a smile to seem genuine as he glanced out the kitchen window, saw the sliver of sun sink lower and lower. "You want me to stay up here with you tonight? I know the coyotes give you a hard time. Maybe I could sit on the porch with the 30-30. "No." Shay snapped his head back from the window, nearly broke his bowl in two with the spoon. "Sorry, Coot, I was just messing about." Barker chuckled, nervous. "It's fine, boy. I'll be all right. I've been up here nearly 60 years. I know how to handle a coyote." If only that's all he had to worry about. Barker smiled as he cleaned up the mess from dinner. Shay became nervous as the sun sank lower. He did not want those visitors to come around while Colt was here. He worried the boy might get hurt, or worse. And enough people have been hurt because of him. "All right, Coot, I'm off." Colt hollered from the front door as Cooper sat in the family room, looking out west as the orange turned purple and black. Cooper had double-checked the windows and doors again, like every night, and locked the door behind the boy. He gathered up extra shells for the double barrel. He was going to be ready for them tonight. Barker's truck lights lit the dusk as he traveled down the drive to the bunkhouse. Cooper wondered what would happen the next morning Colt Barker came to check on him. Would he find him torn to pieces on the porch? Would there be anything left to find? He knew the night was coming. That would mean the end of old Cooper Shay. The wails came abruptly on the house tonight. Moaning, crying, cursing, screaming voices bombarded the closed and locked windows of the house. Most of the time, the voices were impossible to understand. Sometimes he could make out a word or two, a help us here, and a why there. But tonight, he heard voices, ones he recognized.
"Coop, won't you let me in, darling?"
A woman's voice called from the door.
"It gets awful cold out here at night. I could come in and warm you up."
"No," Cooper let out, barely a whisper.
"Please, dear, I'm so cold, and I know you miss how warm I can make you."
The woman replied.
"Just go away, all of you."
Cooper wheeled himself back toward the front door, trying to see what was on the front porch. As he drew near, a woman's head popped over into the thin window alongside the front door. Wavy auburn hair cropped around the shoulders. He knew it was her. Her skin was ashen and pale. Her smile was huge, but it was missing something. Just seemed wrong. Her teeth were gray, and her gums were black and shiny. Her eyes, though, were definitely missing something. In the place where her eyes should be were two deep holes, black craters with no end to them. "You're not real," Coot yelled as he covered his eyes with his sleeve. The woman's laugh had a graininess to it that didn't make sense, like it was being played through a phonograph. Coot tried to wheel himself away, but he caught a flash of movement in another window in the front room. He could make out the silhouette of another creature in the window where he had watched the sunset. But this one was smaller than the woman at the front door, and he knew why.
"Papa, aren't you gonna come out and swing with me?"
A little girl's voice spoke. Cooper's breath caught in his throat. This is worse than it had ever been. These monsters were tormenting him to no end. Cooper bowed his head as he began to sob. He was hopeless. What power did he have to stop these spirits? He knew he deserved it. He just wanted it to be over.
"Papa, please come out."
The little girl's voice spoke again.
"I just want—"
"Shut the fuck up! Leave me alone!" Cooper screamed, and he felt his face turn red. With that outburst, the single-pane windows in the house began to vibrate and then shake. The front door rattled on its hinges, and the whole house seemed alive, teeming with energy. Shay wheeled himself into the center of the front room and faced the door. He retrieved the double-barrel shotgun from the oak side table beside the couch and held it in his lap awkwardly with his one good arm. Screeching and wailing overcame Coot's ears. He couldn't even hear his own voice as he begged for it to stop. He dropped the shotgun as he bent over, covering his right ear, trying to lean his left against his shoulder. His heart pounded in his temples as he felt his heart rate rise. His skin felt hot and itchy, and he felt a pain behind his left eye. As a symphony of terror echoed around him, Coot's vision blurred and darkened around the edges. The wood-paneled walls and furniture blurred into one solid brown smudge. Cooper felt his breath become shallower, and he knew he was fixing to croak. His eyelids became heavy as he struggled to stay upright, and then his wet, blurry vision faded to black, and silence fell around him. Well, by golly, folks, that one did heat up a bit, didn't it? What could old Coop possibly have done to be plagued by these black-eyed visitors, I wonder? Well, maybe we'll find out in the next installment of this trilogy. Until then, folks, ride safe back to the land of the living. We'll see you next time you make it out here to Dead Crow Ranch. This podcast was written, produced, and performed by Chase Tabor. If you like this podcast, subscribe to Dead Crow Ranch wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And please, give us a rate and review on Apple Podcasts or the like, and help us grow our platform. And follow us on Instagram at Dead Crow Ranch Podcast. Until next time, I'll be watching over the fire, making sure none of our tales tries to follow you home. Thanks for listening.